Thank you, James, and welcome. I would like to go through a lot of issues here. Unfortunately, I won't have too much data, which sometimes can be quite helpful. I'll split, and Michael Widerick will talk after me. He will highlight all the non-chemical tactics, which, in time will be our saviour, I hope. But at the moment, we are still heavily relying on the chemical, alternate chemical options. So I'll run down. I've edited this talk to cut out certain words that are specific to southern areas, but I'll go through briefly. And I'll start with wild oats. I've been dealing with that. Resistance started in the mid-90s around the Cruible district. One or two patches. It was resistant to Group A, and since then we've come up with multiple resistant populations. Northern Grower Alliance did a survey in 2007, and even a random survey found 20% of paddocks just had some form of resistance. So I dare say now, 5 or 6 years down the track, the problem's exacerbated, and I'm sure that probably every second farm's dealing with some form of Group A or multiple resistant wild oats. At the moment, I did trial work in certain areas of the northwest where GM canola can play a role to a certain degree, where we can rely on the triazine chemistry and maybe the Group M chemistry. Some of the clearfield varieties may still be of use, but there is inherent low-level populations of Group B resistance out there with your wild oats, so it may not work so well. So yet again, resistance in wild oats is a very complex issue, and if you might get one or two fops that don't work, you may have some other fops or some dims that work. So whatever population you have, you can't second guess. You need to get them thoroughly tested to know what's available and what works. Yet again, chickpeas are the weakest link. For years, people were desperately trying to search for another post-emergent chemistry that could work in the chickpea crop. And at some stages, they were so keen to use Madivan at one particular time when it's totally off-label. So that's totally reliant on the pre-emergent chemistries propping up that crop. Yet again, that links in with what just Chris Preston and Richard Daniel mentioned about using pre-emergent chemistries. I'd rather use the pre-Ms on a cereal crop or something that's quite vigorous and aggressive. Chickpeas are one of the poorest competitors. Liverseed grass. This should be of interest to people up here. Liverseed grass is a reasonably common weed. We found a population around the Boggabite district not that long ago, less than 6 months ago, that survived a decent rate, a normal rate of glyphosate without showing any symptoms. The last two populations up the north around the Palomallawar district were found in about 2008, and we compared it. In this photo here, you've got the susceptible in the middle. The right-hand side is the known resistant population from up our way here around Palomallawar, but the one on the left is from Boggabri, which didn't show any symptom whatsoever. I was actually concerned whether it actually got sprayed. But this was found in a cotton system, irrigation system, and I know these seeds float quite readily in water, so you never know where they go. So it's just another highlight, even though it's been about 7 years since our last confirmed case. We've just got one recently, so it's the third case. And yet again, the control is usually reliant on either cultivation, Group A herbicides, followed by paraquat, or some pre-emergent chemistry in the fallow. Yet again, I say pre-emergent chemistry. I'd rather try and start at the beginning of the life cycle and put a pre-emergent chemistry down first, if possible, then use the post-emergent options. Barnyard grass. Well, this is the heartland generally of barnyard grass and glyphosate resistance, anywhere from Narrabri up to, say, Goondiwindi, Darling Downs. First discovered in 2007, population steadily increased to 20 confirmed cases a year or so later, and then with collaboration between New South Wales and DPI, Queensland Department and Northern Grower Alliance, a targeted survey was undertaken that went up to about 60 odd populations, and last year more survey works pushed that up to close to 100 samples. We've got some populations in the Central West now, which is of concern for them. they're a little bit behind the ball in terms of what we've learnt so far, and they've got a lot to learn from us. But yet again, it's another grass fallow weed that requires Group A chemistry, followed by paraquat or cultivation or decent pre-emergent herbicides. That research has been done a fair bit. If they need any questions in the audience later, I can go into some detail. There is concern clearly that if our use of Group A chemistries not followed up by some post-emergent practice, will potentially lead to Group A resistance. Feather-top rhodes, well, it's a tolerant species, as Richard Daniel alluded to. It's not on a herbicide label, but that's commonly known that they survive at least 8 litres per hectare. My biggest concern is what I'm seeing is I see it frequently all the way down the Newell Highway, Castle Road highways, anywhere around most of the state where it's on the roadsides, but the potential to jump into paddocks and cause damage. It's just a matter of time whether we're starting to get patches in areas we haven't seen it. So my predictions, crystal ball gaze, is another 5 or 10 years it'll be a little bit more common down south and might be Narrabri and beyond. Yet again, limited control. The NGA have put out a permit for haloxyphop verdict type products followed by paraquat. Does a reasonable job, but we do need to go a little bit early and get herbicides registered prior to that application to keep our numbers low. Here's some other chemistries that Queensland Department of, or DAF I should say now, is investigating some just general herbicide groups. We've got really good control already from some of the imidazolone herbicides and triazines, and also things like esmetolachlor, but we've also got, which is hope for the farming and the grain producers, that there are other chemistries that do show a lot of efficacy on barnyard grass, feather-top rhodes and windmill grass. It's just a matter of getting enough data and getting a data package to the registrants or the APVMA or a minor use permit to get some of these out in practice. Fleabane, it's been around for a while. It's been confirmed resistant around 2010. There's no need to do a survey where it is. It's blown here, there and everywhere due to the wind. So a lot of people should, wherever they've got fleabane, will not get good control of glyphosate. The benefits here, chemical companies are getting registrations for control, and they're also not just looking on Group I or hormonal chemistry, they're looking at other herbicide groups like Group H, which are the bleaching type herbicides. And so there's alternatives out there that will be hopefully in place to give some alternate modes of action for control, particularly in crop or pre-emergent. There is also work by the Australian, by a national project that I'm in with GRDC that we're trying to keep weeds like this clean on fence lines and farm tracks, so it's not a source of weed seed for a crop. More pleasant news, I'm sort of like the undertaker here, but South Thistle, as of early this year, was confirmed glyphosate resistant. It was in one of the homes of glyphosate resistance, which was at Liverpool Plains, where they're already dealing with glyphosate resistant annual ryegrass. We found a population on the recent Glyphosate Sustainable Working Group, growing quite happily. Most of their control was actually attributed to using a Group B herbicide with glyphosate, but where they didn't use a Group B, there were some nice, large, tall, happy plants. It's got serious implications for everyone, because being a wind-blown seed, we will basically inherit this weed regardless of our actions. It will blow in from anywhere, like fleabane. That's a photo there of fleabane, South Thistle in a young Roundup Ready crop. It had been sprayed there, but sprayed again, and I got some seed from that population that was found to be quite resistant. The problem is now, we used to rely on glyphosate as the main mode of action for South Thistle control and fallows, and a bit of antagonism with the hormonals. Now, once the glyphosate might be lost, we really have to turn to a lot of other modes of action for control. And that data is not readily available. So we're going to have to investigate a fair bit. Here's the population on the left-hand side sprayed. with, I think that's 2 litres of touchdown high-tech, but there are populations I've hit with 4 litres of straight glyphosate CT, and they survive quite nicely once they're beyond the stem elongation stage. I use 4 litres because that's the highest rate you could use via the weed seeker in the permit available. And the biotypes are quite interesting. There's a leaf down the bottom right there, which is looks like a holly type leaf, but it is still Sonchus oleracea, a common sow thistle. And the one in the middle is another biotype, and they've got different leaf shapes. So the classic one I'm seeing is the one down the bottom, which is quite tolerant, or resistant, I should say. I did a rate response trial also, so not just 4 litres, but the standard rates. So that's the first glyphosate-resistant Sonchus species in the world, and the 7th glyphosate-resistant species in Australia, which is not good news. Some of these populations will be given to Michael Widerick and a few other researchers that might look at alternative options for control, because they've already looked at double knocking with glyphosate followed by paraquat or other mixtures, and they got very good control, which I'll show in the next slide. But now that's the goalposts have changed. If glyphosate's not working, we're going to have to look at alternative strategies. We have done a survey of looking around that area, and we found possibly another 2 populations, but they're still confined to the Liverpool Plain. So nothing as yet up this way, but given a good strong southerly, anything can happen. Michael, you can't see the data here, but all the ones in green are double knock treatments, and they've all got basically close to 100% control. So things like Roundup attack followed by spray seed. And the ones in red where you won't be able to read the data, it's a tank mix of glyphosate followed with a group I chemistry, and essentially the control is greatly reduced, and that's what we've been seeing.